Welcome back to the program. With me now, the DPG Advisory Director, David Gazzard, and Australia Institute Executive Director, Ben Oquist. Gents, thanks. It's been a big afternoon, and it was an emotional news conference, wasn't it? A very tense and emotional news conference from the Attorney-General. What did you think, David?
Well, it's just so messy and so tangled, but I agree with his points and I agreed with his reasoning about why he would stay on, because we're in a situation now where you can just air a grievance or an allegation against a cabinet minister and there's no process that actually supports a fair trial. The presumption of innocence is gone, and our democratic system that has depended on the executive of government being separate and the parliament being separate from the judiciary has also been negated. So you're now asking for the Prime Minister to have inquiries, to have his own police force, in effect, to determine the guilt or otherwise of a person who, by his own admission today, has never had a substantive allegation put to him. So we're in uncharted territory that I don't think speaks highly of the way we can function as a democracy if we don't observe the standards that have got us here over hundreds of years.
Ben Oquist, your assessment?
I know what David is saying, but of course the Prime Minister has to come to his own judgment about the appropriateness of cabinet ministers. But I guess I see it in also a larger context too, which is, I saw Grace Tame's speech today, following on from Brittany Higgins' powerful address, and just leaving aside Christian Porter, the case of whether there should be a separate inquiry or not, the Prime Minister has a kind of bigger challenge on his hand. As we're at a transformational moment in politics, and the debates about gender and equality and women's rights not to be harassed or assaulted, sometimes assaulted at work. And it's potentially transformative of our social and political debate, and that's a big challenge and opportunity for the Prime Minister. So leaving aside the rights and wrongs of the Christian Porter case just for a moment, here is a huge challenge for the Prime Minister, and I don't think we've seen that leadership from him yet. I hear what David's saying, but I was surprised that the Prime Minister hadn't read the letter that was sent to him. He has to make his own judgments, of course, and he's heard Christian Porter's side, but I think it's wise for him to read that letter. But beyond that, we're seeing a monumental shift in our political and social debate about gender, equity and the rights of women, and the Prime Minister has to come to terms with that debate, seize that opportunity to make some great change for Australia.
My answer to that is, because I agree, we are at a different time, but you don't get to where we need to go by junking the institutions that have served us well, that allow for someone to have a fair trial. That is where that should happen. It should not happen in the Prime Minister's office, although he's got to be aware of what's going on and he's got to set the direction for where he wants the government to go. I mean, imagine, Ben, if the same inquiry process were used to nobble a political opponent or a political rival. I mean, you can't have that sort of function sit inside the Prime Minister's office. In fact, democracy has been designed to take that outside the executive. So you are entitled to a fair trial. You are entitled to separate these things from the business of governing.
We'll get Ben's reaction to that in a moment, but I just have a statement here from the State Coroner in South Australia, and it says, basically, the investigation is continuing. This is from State Coroner David Whittle in SA. The investigation is continuing, and once that investigation has been completed to my satisfaction, I shall determine whether to hold an inquest. So that is still a possibility of an inquest there in SA.
And I would say that is the appropriate place to have it.
Ben Oquist, just to you to finally, we're almost out of time, but to wrap up this afternoon.
Yeah, I think the inquest is important. I thought Malcolm Turnbull's words on the need to have that were very powerful. I think the Prime Minister would be in a better position, though, if he was leading this debate that is transforming our discussion about women and their role and their rights to be treated fairly and equally. And I think he's not leading that debate. And this is a huge opportunity for Australia with the likes of Grace Tame and Brittany Higgins speaking out, and the friends of the woman who alleges she was raped.
Ben Oquist, David Gazzard, gentlemen, thank you. Talk to you both soon.
The bottom 20% get nothing. They're really unfair tax cuts.
People want to see much stronger action from the government when it comes to climate change.
It's no coincidence that we have a wages crisis in Australia.
Transitioning to net zero emissions, it doesn't seem like there's much room for gas.